Tonight's episode is brought to you by Cookie Unity, direct from the chef to you. For 50% off, go to cookunity.com/reach. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very, very special live edition of Narrative Live. Normally, I'm pretty scripted. Normally, I just tell you, you can even hear my phone talking to myself here. I'm going to turn that down. I'm keeping my phone open so I can read messages from you. We're absolutely live tonight because there's been so much to dissect about today's incredible events in New York that I thought I'll just give caution to the wind, as it were, and allow us to have a conversation about what an immense, serious day today was. I mean, if you, like many of our viewers are, 8 years into this, having tried to find ways to prosecute Donald Trump for 8 years and proposed so many of these ways to prosecute Donald Trump for 8 years, to now be here in a situation where you're actually seeing a criminal case unfolding is remarkable. And I will say up front that I was one of those people who said that this isn't the case. This is the case that I thought was a bit too lukewarm and not sophisticated enough, not clear enough to really warrant to go first or during the election campaign. But I changed my mind today. There's something so intrinsically wrong with what was revealed in the court today. We learned today that Donald Trump and David Pecker were involved in the most salacious, disgusting operation, which clearly did not just start during the campaign of 2015. It appears to me like it started way back in the 1980s, in the 1990s. It's like 40 years of what would you call it? Scandal exposure, blackmail. What would you call exposing the private lives and the private scandals of people in the pages of the National Enquirer? I mean, if you were going to do that just as the National Enquirer and you're doing good reporting on your own, all good for you. But if you're doing it now at the behest of someone who is currently running for the president of the United States, a former president of the United States, and previously thought of as a mob boss, well, what are you? What is the National Enquirer really? And what has our media become if it is now beholden to, the biggest mob boss that we know of, or perhaps the biggest former president that we know of? And who has any chance of competing against that when you've got people operating in the sidelines of what is legal, committing what I think is an actual crime, though I think we'll find out it is an actual crime, and committing these horrific offenses. And it's one thing that, you're just catch and killing stories that might be impacting your own election. Maybe you can get away with that. But something tells me this is a lot more than that. I mean, over 40 years, can you imagine how many stories Donald Trump would have gotten into Pecker's National Enquirer? How many hundreds of stories over 40 years? How many dirty stories about former politicians, about former celebrities have been exposed in the pages of National Enquirer? I just think of, there's just so many. I think of Bill Clinton. That's Monica Lewinsky's story ultimately was a National Enquirer story. And when you think about how many people it involved, how many people it affected, and how it, some people say ended the Oslo Peace Accord, amongst other things, because it was such a distraction for Bill Clinton. I mean, was that something that was coordinated by the National Enquirer and some other entity, maybe like a Donald Trump? I don't know. Was he doing this for 40 years? That's a question I really have to ask. And in that case, we're talking about the 1990s. You know who Donald Trump was hanging around with a lot in the 1990s? Jeffrey Epstein. He was, that was that crowd. Adnan Khashoggi, that was that crowd in the 1990s, as we've, almost exclusively reported right here on Narrative. That's been a storyline that we've been following for, way too long. So, you think about all those factors colliding, that you have a David Pecker now confessing in a criminal court today that he is quite capable of doing things that are, really damaging to people's lives by buying, suppressing, maybe even buying and actually running stories that are scandalous and damaging to people's lives, but not for his own good and not because of his own journalism, but because of the journalism that it may help other parties, that it may help the incoming president of the United States in this case, or potential incoming president Donald Trump, or it may help Rudy Giuliani, or it may help who the Saudis. The Saudis own a piece of American media as well. So who is really running and pulling the strings, the editorial strings of AMI? And are we allowing these criminal foreign entities, or these criminal entities with very, very dubious political claims to fame, to operate in our system in a way that is completely malign, completely malignant, and destructive of our system? I'm sure you have things to say about this, and I'll be glad to take your comments. One of the reasons I'm a little late today is because I did want to share with you a couple of things. I have now transcripts now from yesterday's opening statements. They're quite compelling. And originally, I thought this case was just a nothing case. But the more I look into this, the more we're finding out about the dirtiness, the scumminess of this operation, that for so long that these people have been doing this to our American system, poisoning it really from day to day. These revelations are pretty stunning. And they go far beyond Daniels or what's the name of the other one? It'll come back to me because I just wrote a piece about her. But, it goes far beyond the women that he slept with or claimed to have relationships with him. Of course, it goes far beyond that. This is a 40-year influence operation by Donald Trump, which has affected our politics from for 40 years. Let's talk about it from the 1980s probably onwards. Although I think Pecker originally got American media in the 90s. They've been friends since the 1980s. And again, the framework of the 1990s, and I spent a lot of time in that mindset as I've been researching Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and all the ongoings on in Palm Beach and what have you. I think in 1987, when these two met, when David Pecker met Donald Trump, I think Maxwell was still alive. I think Robert Maxwell was still around. In fact, it may be in 1987 or somewhere around there that he brought his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, to New York for a little party where Donald Trump was at that party. It may have even been that Mr. Pecker was at that party. Who knows? It's just so scandalous and gross. But so I've got the opening statements. I'm going to read some of them after we do something really interesting. I did want to mention before we get anywhere else the interesting observations of Rachel Maddow, who I quite adore, and who had this to say yesterday as she spent a day in the court. This was her observations. On the other side of this, for the first time ever, I've done something really unusual. I've taken the ability to now create AI voices. I've applied them to today's known transcripts. I don't have the full transcripts, but I pulled together 6 minutes of transcripts. I've got these AI voices reading them. I'm dying to see how it turns out. I'm dying to see your comments on that. But before we get there, let's take a listen to Rachel as she describes what is not your typical surroundings for Donald J. Trump, the former president of the United States.
I was in the courtroom for opening statements for this first criminal trial of the former president. I can report firsthand that the courtroom smells like old soup and stale breath. I can report that the police officers who police the courtroom are working very hard and they appear to be very stressed. I can report that Judge Merchan is soft-spoken and has what I think would be universally considered to be a pleasant voice. I can report that Prosecutor Matthew Colangelo speaks exactly like Seth Meyers speaks when Seth Meyers is not telling jokes. I can tell you that the first witness, David Pecker, accidentally gave out his whole phone number today when the prosecutor just asked him to confirm the last 4 digits. He was trying to remember the last 4 digits, and in order to get there in his head, he said the whole number out loud, and oops, didn't mean to do that. I can report that former President Donald Trump looks a lot older than he used to, and that it seemed to me, in my subjective take, that he seemed miserable to be there. But, I look a lot older than I used to look as well. And I think anybody's got a right to look miserable when they're sitting in a courtroom charged with dozens of felonies as a criminal defendant.
Isn't she absolutely right? The lovely Rachel Maddow, they're describing what it was like to smell Donald Trump and company in their court case yesterday. It sounds absolutely not my cup of tea, but and I'm sure it's not his cup of tea either. There on the what is now the right side of the screen is you'll see the transcripts from yesterday's opening statements. Mr. Colangelo was the leading prosecutor there, who laid out quite a remarkable case. If you have access to them and you want to follow along, this is page 40. We're not going to go there yet because I want to sort of start the other side. I'm going to start with today's events. As I said to you before we went to Rachel, I spent a little time today in my edit suite trying to put together an AI-voiced version of the events of today. So this is unlike something you've seen anywhere else. This is an animated. Animated is probably the wrong term. It's an AI voice, is what it is. These are AI voices, except for the one mine in here. That's not an AI voice. Everything else is an AI voice, and it's not necessarily sounding like anything like the real people in the court case actually sound like. I don't know what they sound like, but I took some voices and I matched them to this script, and I wanted you guys to have a sense of what it would be like to be inside that courtroom today, listening to this incredible testimony. And because of that, this may not reflect reality. I should just say, keep in mind that what you're about to see is a reconstructed version of what happened today in court. It is not the actual sounds of the courts. It's not the actual voices of the people in court. It is just some voices to go along with the script, because I think it just brings the whole story to life. It's 5 minutes, and it really takes you through the entire story of David Pecker, of how he met Donald Trump, of his experiences with Michael Cohen, and how he was in August 2015, co-opted into, wasn't co-opted, he agreed to be part of this conspiracy to really change the course of American history by becoming a disinformation machine of some sort for Donald Trump and his campaign, by running to catch and kill stories on behalf of Donald Trump in a way that I've never really seen in my 30 years in journalism. I've never encountered catch and kill on this kind of basis. Now, I've had stories of my own that have been caught and killed. I've been in stories, and I've actually bought some stories in my life for different credible news organizations where that became necessary. And we're not talking anything like these, of course. But, to imagine a scheme that goes on that's so big that it now needs a full-time tabloid magazine to be running interference for the president's ridiculously scandalous past. I mean, that just takes it to a whole new level. So you'll hear about that from David Pecker. You'll hear a little bit about what's coming up in the case. I would like to get your thoughts if you have them. You can log on to the, I think it's the X now, Twitter X, whatever you call it, live feed, and there's a comment page over there, so you can comment over there, or whatever. I don't do this live anymore. This is like old school live. That was many, many years ago. Now I pretend to be a very serious news anchor. But because I'm not able to do that today, I'll let you have a good look now at my animated recreation, if you will, of today's events in the courthouse, where Donald Trump was hearing from David Pecker, as we all were hearing from David Pecker, the scheme, the layout of the scheme, how they were able to construct a system that was able to catch and kill the stories that could have cost Donald Trump the election in 2016. Here we go. Pecker said that he first met Trump at Mar-a-Lago in 1988 or 1989. They soon collaborated on a quarterly magazine.
I had an idea of creating a magazine called Trump Style. He liked the idea a lot. He just questioned who was going to pay for it.
Their friendship grew through the 1990s.
When I bought the Inquirer, Trump called to congratulate me on buying a great magazine.
Later, as The Apprentice took off, Trump would call Pecker to plant stories in the Inquirer. Fast forward to August 2015, 2 months after Trump launched his campaign for president, Pecker is at Trump Tower to meet with Trump. Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, is there, and so is Hope Hicks, Trump's former communications director. They discussed stories that could impact the presidential campaign.
I said I would be your eyes and ears. And then I said that anything that I hear in the marketplace, if I hear anything negative about you, or if I hear anything about women selling stories, I would notify Michael Cohen. I thought a lot of women would come out to try to sell their stories because Mr. Trump was well known as the most eligible bachelor and dated the most beautiful women. It was of mutual benefit. It would help his campaign. It would also help me.
How did Trump react?
As I recollect, he was pleased. Michael Cohen was pleased. Nothing was put into writing. It was an agreement among friends. From that point on, I'd see Trump about once a month. We'd speak on the phone, maybe once every couple of weeks.
Pecker testified about a story involving Dino Sajidin, the Trump Tower doorman who claimed that Trump had fathered an illegitimate child with a maid.
Have you heard of Dino Sajidin?
He was selling a story about Donald Trump had an illegitimate daughter with a maid. I told Michael Cohen as part of our August agreement. Immediately, Michael Cohen says to me, absolutely not true, but I'll check it out.
Then what?
I told Dylan we should prepare a source agreement that Dino should take a polygraph.
What you were about to say, don't say that. What is a source agreement?
With the tipster, we get exclusive rights, say 90 days.
Did you do one with Mr. Sajidin? Yes, and arranged a $500 polygraph. Please do not speak about polygraph results.
I told Cohen this is a very big story and it should be removed from the market. He said, thank you, and the boss will be very pleased. We bought it for $30,000. Cohen told me Mr. Trump would take a DNA test. He is German-Irish, and this woman is Hispanic.
Why did you buy it?
I thought if the story was true, it would be probably the biggest story for the National Enquirer since the death of Elvis Presley.
People's 154, Sajidin contract, 11-15-15. Read it.
30,000 is set forth below. Source shall provide a MI with information regarding Donald Trump's illegitimate child and any and all documentation, including but not limited to letters and any legal documents, and photographs in source's possession relevant to the exclusive. We hired an investigator and found that the story was 1,000% untrue.
Why did you pay?
If another outlet got it, I'd be embarrassed. I show you People's Exhibit 164, an email.
Here's Trump's attorney raising an objection to this email being included. Objection. Judge Marchand.
Please approach.
A whispered sidebar ensues.
I'll admit it, subject to redaction.
The email requests a wire transfer in his W-9.
What did Cohen say about it?
I told Cohen that having Sajidin locked in was only going to cause us more problems. Cohen said no, he wanted to lock Sajidin in until after the election.
Did there come a time you did release him?
Yes. Sharon Churcher was another reporter. She worked for Barry Levine. This is Dino's release.
Another story that Pecker testified to involved Karen McDougal, a former Playboy model who claimed to have had a year-long affair with Donald Trump.
Who was Karen McDougal?
A Playboy model who was trying to sell a story about a relationship she had with Donald Trump for a year. I sent Dylan Howard out to California. He met the lawyer Keith Davidson and Karen, interviewed her for a few hours. In that time, I spoke with Cohen. He kept on calling me, more anxious each time. I told Cohen. He said untrue. I said, let's vet it.
Did you discuss paying?
No. I told Cohen we'd keep him apprised.
Pecker testified that Cohen had told him they should not be discussing this over a landline and should instead be using Signal, the encrypted messaging app.
I still don't know whether it's true that messages are destroyed after sending. At this point, he went from talking to Cohen a couple times a week to speaking with him every day, sometimes twice a day.
When the story of McDougal's alleged affair with Trump emerged, Pecker said that Trump called him.
I told him that McDougal had an offer from Dancing with the Stars. I suggested Trump buy McDougal's story. He said, anytime you do something like this, it always comes out. I said, I still think we should buy it. Trump said he wanted to talk to Cohen and that he would call back in a couple of days.
The term catch and kill refers to the practice of purchasing the rights to a potentially damaging story with the intention of preventing its publication. The practice was allegedly used by AMI to protect Donald Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign.
I told the editors I want you to vet the stories. I want you to bring them to me, and then we'll have to speak to Michael Cohen. We're going to try to help the campaign, and to do that, we are going to keep this as quiet as possible.
What a scheme. I mean, what an incredible scheme that these guys have come up with. And they're so used to it. They talk about it like it's nothing. I mean, they described it as checkbook journalism, but it's, you know, something they've been doing clearly for 40 years. This is the business that they're in. They're in the business of trashing people's names, of peddling disgusting stories. This is the former president of the United States in this business. This is David Pecker, his business partner in this case, his conspiracy partner. These are the people who you want to rule America? You want to rule the free world? The people who live by blackmail and scandal? I don't know. This is quite a revelation that came out today. I was blown away by what we discovered about the morality of these two people, but more importantly, that they've been doing this for so long, they don't even think it's that unusual. I mean, the way they've discussed this, like, it's nothing. I mean, Michael Cohen just sauntering in and out of these conversations like it's, it's like what you're ordering for lunch. The fact that you're going to bury a story about a child, an illegitimate child, the future president of the United States might have had, or the various affairs that he might have had while he was married. This is the kind of, hey, you just shake your head, We've known that Donald Trump has been a criminal all his life. We've seen it. We've reproved it millions of times, but somehow he keeps getting away with it. And maybe this is why, when you have operations like the National Enquirer running interference for you and taking down your opponents, I mean, you have to go to these questions. You have to ask the questions about, was there any involvement here between maybe Pecker wasn't there, I don't know, but Pecker and the National Enquirer and Clinton back then, and the Monica Lewinsky affair. Certainly not the only presidential candidate who was taken down. Andrews, I think you got Andrews the right word. You're gonna have to help me here. I do know the name. I'm just sort of blanking on it right now. But we've had presidential candidates who've many times befallen to the National Enquirer's writing, and there's been scandals over and over again on those things. So this is a publication which I think someone once nominated for a Pulitzer, which is kind of stunning when you think about it. And yet here they are. This is how they operate. They operate on the basis of paying off people for their stories, paying people for their stories, no matter what. Now, I'm not naive. I'm not I'm not innocent to these things. I've worked in journalism for a very long time. I know how the business runs. I know that there's a lot of checks being cut for stories all the time, mostly for things other than the stories. You don't pay for the actual story. You pay for, video clips or photos or things that can still reimburse the person. But, in the couple that I've been involved in, maybe you'd spend $20,000 to get a videotape relevant to a survival story or something like that. It's not, $130,000 to keep the former mistress of the future president of the United States quiet. It's nothing like that. And, clearly this is something these guys have created an entire ecosystem doing. And they're not alone. We know that there are other organizations who have done similar things. But to think that they are so close to the president of the United States and so close to the power center of the United States, of the free world. I mean, can you imagine what happens when people with that kind of moral value, people with that kind of ethics, they take over the free world and they start running the free world's decisions? And there's a lot of people I still talk to today who don't understand why Trump isn't going to be a good president. And this is why Trump is not a good president. He's not a good fit for this job. Maybe he's a good fit for being a mob boss. He should keep doing that. But he should not keep trying to be the leader of the free world, where he rules over everything that we have in the United States. And to have this man who spends all this time thinking about how he's going to cover up scandals by buying off prostitutes, by buying off things, by creating scandals, it just tells you what kind of mind he is. And it also tells you why his entire Republican Party is so fearful of him, because clearly he's got the keys to the safe with all the dirt, all of it. I bet you he knows everybody's business and then some, and can in an instant get it out there. And I think that's the reality of Donald Trump, is that he operates in the underbelly. He operates in the dirt, in the scum, in the gutters of the world. And we cannot allow this great idea that is the United States of America to be turned over to a man whose entire mindset is about how he's going to buy people off so he can hide his crimes, hide his sins. And these are just one of the crimes. We're hearing today, by the way, and I'm not sure you're following this story either, there is a possibility that this Friday, that entire case of the documents case, the espionage case out of Mar-a-Lago, that may be dropped by the judge there. She may drop the entire thing. She's been hinting at it for weeks now. It looks to me like she's ready to do that. Like she may actually drop that entire case, which involves selling the secrets of the United States to our enemies, and doing so in the most haphazard way. We're storing the secret documents of America in a shower, in a bathroom, in a ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, wow, what is this man that has come to America, and why? we're allowing him even a second chance to be the president of the United States. It's stunning to me. And I will say once again, I thought this week's case, or this current case, the hush money case, was the weakest of the cases. But I know Claire McCaskill was one of the people who said this. I'm going to say it is actually the most shocking. I mean, it is even more shocking to me that this man is involved in a 40-year practice of planting, burying, buying scandalous stories involving himself and probably other people. I mean, that's the thing I want to find out is who else has he buried? How many other careers have gone by the wayside because Donald Trump, got the wrong look by them at an industry event? You know that it happened. All right, folks, I've got a little bit of time here, so I just got these today, the transcripts for yesterday's opening statements. But before we do that, last week on the show, I had Steve Schmidt on the show. Steve told us a story about how, Steve Schmidt, okay, right? John McCain's former campaign manager, the guy who's just brilliantly been a Republican strategist who on the right kind of the Republican Party, or the right type of Republican Party. And for years has been really a superstar until Project Lincoln happened, or Lincoln Project happened, whatever they call that. And, he was associated with some of the previous scandals, some of the other people, and his career was almost in an instant taken down. He was accused of being a pedophile. He isn't. And he described to us on the show that he was sent, 200 boxes of human shit, basically. He had to sell the house that he lived in. All sorts of terrible things happened to him. And I want you to hear his very interesting take on how he stands tall in these situations and the way he approaches these instances and the way he's kept his mind together during this incredibly difficult time. Because I think it all connects, ultimately. I mean, Steve was one of the most vocal critics of Donald Trump in the years leading up to he's sort of falling out of favor with the public and the media, and you wonder why he has fallen out of favor, knowing now that this is the kind of thing that Donald Trump does in the background with the National Enquirer, planting stories to take out people who he opposes. That doesn't sound to me like something out of the question for Donald Trump. So I have to just readjust the screen here a little bit so I can play you this thing. But it's Steve in very, very frank terms, as he always speaks in such beautiful prose. He's going to tell us the story of why he has chosen to, how he's reacted to all these things that have happened to him. The ratio of these 2 pages is unusual and weird. I'm going to cut myself out of the screen so you can take a look at it. And I will be back on the other side after we've played Steve Schmidt's very interesting take on what happens to him when he basically revealed too much about his thinking around Donald Trump.
What is the message that breaks the back of Soviet totalitarianism? This movie star handsome guy. And everyone forgets, right? John Paul in 1979, right? When he was in his 50s. What was his message? His message was, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. And if there is one thing I never expected in my life that anybody would know who I was, right? The idea that I would be any level of fame, people would stop you on the street, recognize you. If there is one that I can model, that if I get run over by a bus later today, right, that my kids can be proud of, right, that people could point to, it would be that I hope to do, which is this: do not be afraid of this. Do not rise up against this, right? So no matter what they say, no matter what they do, right, I am who I am on the basis of my conduct, not the smears against me, right? Not the ugliness directed against me. And you just have to walk forward into that and appreciate. And it's tougher some days than others, but to really embrace, judge me by my enemies, right? And when I look at the accumulation of my enemies, They are a rogues gallery of scumbags for the ages. And their intensity of their hatred for me means I know when I close my eyes at night that I have had an impact. And if I didn't, then I wouldn't have that hate from those people. And I'm proud of it.
You certainly have. I mean, you had incredible impact, and you continue every day in your incredible Substack that I hope everyone subscribes to, and in your work everywhere else. I just think you've been able to do so much for this country, and it speaks volumes about who you are. And even at the toughest times, you've been able to again and again prove your patriotism and your real intentions. So I salute you for that. And I also thank you very much for being on the show tonight. It's been a real pleasure having you on.
Great pleasure, Zev. Thank you very much. Thank you.
America, you know, we have to reassess something. We have to reassess on whose terms and on whose say we are canceling people. People like Steve Schmidt should not be canceled. People like Steve Schmidt are some of the most brilliant people we have in politics. And for him not to be out there, center stage of every news day, opining like all these other people who are opining, is ridiculous. There's nothing this man has done to warrant this. And it's beyond me why we still allow these operations to take place and believe in them when they take out people like Steve Schmidt. And now that we have evidence that Donald Trump has been conspiring with people like David Pecker, with Michael Cohen for all these years, doing all the disgusting stuff. And yeah, sure, Michael Cohen may be the star witness or whatever of this case, but how can we sleep at night? How can that man sleep at night knowing how much damage he caused America? How much damage he's caused individuals? I mean, my mea culpa? I don't think so. I don't think he's been mea culpaing very much. We have not heard from him about all the things that he's done in his life where he needs some mea culpa. I've not heard from him about what happened with the Trump Tower in Moscow. I've not heard from him about what happened in Prague. Did you go to Prague? Tell us if you went to Prague and what you did in Prague. And also, what are those medallions and all the dirty stuff you were involved in with Tatiana, those casinos in Florida? Why have you not come clean on those things? You want us to forgive you, Michael Cohen? You need to tell us what you did, because it sure looks like there's a lot more going on here in the underbelly of Donald Trump, David Pecker, and Michael Cohen's conspiracy to steal the American election from Americans by falsifying all this information. It seems to me that is where you need to start with your mea culpa. And I'm sorry if I'm getting carried away here. I mean, some of your fans of Michael Cohen, God bless you. But I will say, guys, let's think before we cancel people. People like Steve Schmidt cannot be canceled because some stupid operation handled by, is it David Pecker? Is it Donald Trump? Is it Rudy Giuliani? Who is handling it? Quite a collection of beasts these are. I have to take a break. After this break, we will go through at least a couple of pages of the opening statements in the prosecution of Donald Trump in the hush money case. That's right after this break. Hey there, it's Zev, and I have a question for you. When was the last time you had a truly memorable meal? You know, one that hit all the right notes, delicious, satisfying, absolutely made with the kind of culinary passion you'd make the meal with yourself? Well, if you're like me, most of those experiences are usually reserved for dining out. But with Cook Unity, you can enjoy incredible chef-crafted meals at home every single night of the week. I've tried my fair share of meal delivery services, but Cook Unity is very different. It's in a league all of its own. The Thai curry chicken I ordered last week was restaurant quality, fragrant, flavorful, and really, really satisfying. I could eat it again right now. And unlike the mass-produced meals of other services, Cook Unity's dishes are handcrafted by local chefs. So you're getting the very best of the best, and it's delivered directly to you at home. Variety is the spice of life, and Cook Unity delivers with hundreds of exciting dishes to choose from each week. And here's the other thing. If you've got vegan dietary needs, paleo, gluten-free, no matter what it is, no problem. You can just let them know, and they'll even filter out allergens like soy, nuts, and dairy. I love knowing I'm supporting local chefs and suppliers while getting wholesome, sustainable meal. You can experience Cook Unity for yourself and see what all the hype is about. Go to cookunity.com/reach, or just type in reach, REACH, before you check out. And because you're so special, you're getting 50% off your first week of dishes from Cook Unity if you order right now. That's cookunity.com /reach, REACH, or use the code REACH, REACH, before you check out. Hey there, it's Zev. Pecker said that he first met Trump at Mar-a-Lago in 1988 or 1989. They soon collaborated on a quarterly magazine.
I had an idea of creating a magazine called Trump Style. He liked the idea a lot. He just questioned who was going to pay for it.
Their friendship grew through the 1990s.
When I bought the Inquirer, Trump called to congratulate me on buying a great magazine.
Later, as The Apprentice took off, Trump would call Pecker to plant stories in the Inquirer. Fast forward to August 2015, 2 months after Trump launched his campaign for president, Pecker is at Trump Tower to meet with Trump. Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, is there, and so is Hope Hicks, Trump's former communications director. They discussed stories that could impact the presidential campaign.
I said, I would be your eyes and ears. And then I said that anything that I hear in the marketplace, if I hear anything negative about you, or if I hear anything about women selling stories, I would notify Michael Cohen. I thought a lot of women would come out to try to sell their stories because Mr. Trump was well known as the most eligible bachelor and dated the most beautiful women. It was of mutual benefit. It would help his campaign. It would also help me.
How did Trump react?
As I recollect, he was pleased. Michael Cohen was pleased. Nothing was put into writing. It was an agreement among friends. From that point on, I'd see Trump about once a month. We'd speak on the phone, maybe once every couple of weeks.
Pecker testified about a story involving Dino Sajidin, the Trump Tower doorman who claimed that Trump had fathered an illegitimate child with a maid.
Have you heard of Dino Sajidin?
He was selling a story about Donald Trump had an illegitimate daughter with a maid. I told Michael Cohen as part of our August agreement. Immediately, Michael Cohen says to me, absolutely not true, but I'll check it out.
Then what?
I told Dylan we should prepare a source agreement that Dino should take a polygraph.
What you were about to say, don't say that. What is a source agreement?
With a tipster, we get exclusive rights, say 90 days.
Did you do one with Mr. Sajidin? Yes, and arranged a $500 polygraph. Please do not speak about polygraph results.
I told Cohen this is a very big story and it should be removed from the market. He said, thank you, and the boss will be very pleased. We bought it for $30,000. Cohen told me Mr. Trump would take a DNA test. He is German-Irish, and this woman is Hispanic.
Why did you buy it?
I thought if the story was true, it would be probably the biggest story for the National Enquirer since the death of Elvis Presley.
People's 154, Sajidin contract, 11-15-15. Read it.
30,000 is set forth below. Source shall provide a MI with information regarding Donald Trump's illegitimate child and any and all documentation, including but not limited to letters and any legal documents, and photographs in source's possession relevant to the exclusive. We hired an investigator and found that the story was 1,000% untrue.
Why did you pay?
If another outlet got it, I'd be embarrassed. I show you People's Exhibit 164, an email.
Here's Trump's attorney raising an objection to this email being included. Objection. Judge Marchand.
Please approach.
A whispered sidebar ensues.
I'll admit it, subject to redaction.
The email requests a wire transfer in his W-9.
What did Cohen say about it?
I told Cohen that having Sajidin locked in was only going to cause us more problems. Cohen said no, he wanted to lock Sajidin in until after the election.
Did there come a time you did release him?
Yes. Sharon Churcher was another reporter. She worked for Barry Levine. This is Dino's release.
Another story that Pecker testified to involved Karen McDougal, a former Playboy model who claimed to have had a year-long affair with Donald Trump.
Who was Karen McDougal?
A Playboy model who was trying to sell a story about a relationship she had with Donald Trump for a year. I sent Dylan Howard out to California. He met the lawyer Keith Davidson and Karen, interviewed her for a few hours. In that time, I spoke with Cohen. He kept on calling me, more anxious each time. I told Cohen. He said untrue. I said, let's vet it.
Did you discuss paying?
No. I told Cohen we'd keep him apprised.
Pecker testified that Cohen had told him they should not be discussing this over a landline and should instead be using Signal, the encrypted messaging app.
I still don't know whether it's true that messages are destroyed after sending. At this point, he went from talking to Cohen a couple times a week to speaking with him every day, sometimes twice a day.
When the story of McDougal's alleged affair with Trump emerged, Pecker said that Trump called him.
I told him that McDougal had an offer from Dancing with the Stars. I suggested Trump buy McDougal's story. He said, Anytime you do something like this, it always comes out. I said I still think we should buy it. Trump said he wanted to talk to Cohen and that he would call back in a couple of days.
The term catch and kill refers to the practice of purchasing the rights to a potentially damaging story with the intention of preventing its publication. The practice was allegedly used by AMI to protect Donald Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign.
I told the editors I want you to vet the stories, I want you to bring them to me, and then we'll have to speak to Michael Cohen. We're going to try to help the campaign, and to do that, we are going to keep this as quiet as possible.
Tonight's episode is brought to you by Cookie Unity, direct from the chef to you. For 50% off, go to cookunity.com/reach.
One day, you'll tell the story of autocrats, crooks, and kings who came for our freedom. A story of citizens who stood up to tyranny and won. The people prevailed and renewed an old vow to a more perfect union. And that was just the beginning. The story continues. Narrative, where truth lives.